Okay, all right, so we'll call the meeting to order at 6:30 and 12:19. Just for the record, we'll start.
This is Amy Manzelli. I'm going to run the meeting today because Andy Camage, the chair, cannot be here. Welcome everybody to what I think is going to be our last meeting of the year. Okay. Do we have any public comments? There's nobody in the room and we are not allowing public comments online, so we'll move right along. Agenda review. Patty, do we have any need to make additions or change things around?
I could say that we'd add an informational item, but I could just give it to you now.
Let's do it.
So I put in the drive the audit update. I asked the auditors, they had sort of updated me on where they were at, but I asked them to go all the way through to the current audits to kind of map out for each district where we thought we would be finishing up, because I think that was of interest to some people. So that's in the drive for you. And I know it's been brought to a couple of NBCs as well. So feel free to share if anyone's looking for that. It's in the drive.
And just as a time saver, I don't need you to read through the whole thing, but when will that be available for the public?
It can be available at any time. We can post it on the website if you'd like.
I think that makes sense because I know this is an item of interest, so let's do that.
If it's not already there, I'll have Ashley put it up.
Thank you. Any other adjustments to the agenda?
The audit are on the website, the SAU website. They're very difficult to find. You have to go into boards, then you have to choose Pembroke, then you have to go to budget and financial information, and then you have to create that Microsoft, what's it called? SharePoint. So since we're on the subject, we do something about that.
Shouldn't have to do share.
Yeah, I had to do SharePoint. So that was.
Yeah, so the request is to make sure to post the information in a readily accessible way. Maybe 1 or 2 clicks.
Out there. It's definitely SharePoint and creating account. So that may create roadblocks.
Yeah, that should.
I mean, it's a free account, but still, it's
Shouldn't have to. Yeah, I can check.
So, kind of in the same vein as the audit update. I know it's been asked a couple of times by Jerry and others from the NBC about if the board has signed off on the audits. Is that something that's been done in the past where the board gets the audits and they sign off on them?
We have never had a sign off. We just provide them to the board, but I don't think there's any document that the auditors asked to be actually signed.
Just want that on the record. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, Melanie, you good with the agenda? Okay, Jean? Okay, all right. Let's go to any consent items?
Yep.
Okay, so that brings us to immediate business A, fiscal year 24-25 budget. We're going to go over the cut sheet first.
Yes.
Okay. So for everybody following along, the cut sheet was in the drive and it looks like Patty is handing out hard copies as well. This is the same as what was in the drive?
Yes. So I didn't bring a new version of the budget to you this evening because I wanted to see how you were feeling about the cuts that we had come up with. I think last time I had told you that this is the first time that you see the bottom line is the first time the administration sees the bottom line. So typically once we see that and we realize that, this year there's a pretty extraordinary increase. We went back line by line to see if there were places that we could find to use alternative funding and or if there were places that we felt that we could make cuts given the increase. So we've categorized things. This is a similar sheet that you've seen in the past. We literally went line by line in the budget. We've designated $13,397 out of the instructional materials trust. And our grant writer, who's Crystal Tilton, does a great job updating our ESSER grant, and we asked her to go in and sort of see if there was any money left and then close out any activities we had open that may be finished so we could free up more money. So at this point, we're I think we freed up around 228,000. We've designated 238, but we are confident there are more activities that we're going to close and we'll be able to fund all of these items. It's something the board needs to consider because highlighted in red, a lot of the 238,000 is our technology replacement. So while it does lower the budget this year and it takes care of that and it provides a place to cut, next year it will be right back in the budget again. So just to make you aware of that. But these are all things that are very similar to things we've already had approved in ESSER. So we're feeling pretty confident that they will, there won't be any difficulty getting them approved. This grant is expiring and has to be fully expended by September 30th. So this is the last ESSER grant and it needs to be expended. So we thought that that was a good place to reallocate these funds. And then the bottom section of the cut sheet are just straight cuts. And that comes to $274,000. So we did put the 2 positions that we were asking for, math coaches at Hill and Three Rivers. Tried to just go through and, got rid of the furniture replacement cycle that we were looking for just to try to get through another year to help out. Amber made some adjustments in the separation benefits in the master educator section because she updated it based upon what you've approved for retirements with actual people. The total, if you add all of those 3 categories together, is $526,305. So certainly, I'm sure you've had time to look at, digest the budget and may have your own ideas, but in order to help facilitate, this is the list that we came up to present to you.
We want to sort of go around to the table. Start with Carrie. Do you have any comments or questions on any of what Patty has gone over or what's in the sheet that she didn't touch on?
I do. With this, the separation benefits and master educator, can you just explain, like, I know we approved things, but we're cutting, so just.
Yes, so when we did, on the warrant article last year, we had to put, for the new retirement incentive, we had to put an amount of cost, our biggest risk. So we said, okay, if there are 3 people that retire, this is how much it would cost, and this is where those would come from. So we had, based upon the number of retirements you put in, Amber removed some of the excess in the master educator salary section. And then some of the separation benefit changed because even people who aren't retiring under the benefit, if they leave, they can still get the sick leave buyout. So that's where she adjusted that. Welcome.
Anything else, Carrie?
No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, we can come back. Melanie?
I just have a couple questions. The first one is the Hill and TRS math coaches.
Yep.
Those won't come from anywhere else. Those are straight cuts.
Yes.
Because I'm not okay with those.
Yeah, so those cuts, also if you look on the left in red where it says fringes, a large portion of that goes along with those 2 positions. So the fringes are 86,000. Some of those go along with the days that we put in for summer tech support and summer nurse days. So like if the nurse gets extra days, some of that fringe would have been attributed to, taking taxes out and whatever. But the majority of that is from those positions.
I'll jump in on that one because I did a little bit of analysis from the Department of Education website from the 2023 testing data so far. And from the, hold on here.
Math is low.
Yeah, math is really low, but I want to actually go over the numbers because I think the actual data is important. There's over 30,000 rows of data. So out of the 30,000 rows of data, and that's not necessarily 30,000 schools, of course, because a lot of schools report multiple times because of different cohorts and different grades. I've got us highlighted. So out of the 30,000 plus, We come in at 302. So like the bottom, 302 out of 30,000. So not only is it low, but it's like the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. So that's the whole district and Pembroke Hill School. When you look at Three Rivers, it's slightly better, but still at the bottom. So that is row 1252. So it's definitely not as low, but still in the bottom. So I just don't think that we can, I don't think it passes the smile test to say that we can not be investing in math in this school district. I understand the budget is what the budget is and we don't have unlimited funds and we're doing what we need to do. We are making full-blown cuts, meaning we are just going without things that are needed. And we are also finding alternative funding sources, meaning dipping into our trust and using the ESSER funds. So we're being prudent, but with the math status, we just cannot afford to not invest in math. And that's my one comment on this cut sheet.
So those numbers are based pretty much solely on standardized test scores. So y'all know I have a big problem with that right off the bat. So what I'm wondering, this is a factor that we have to take into consideration is our schools, and we have competency-based grading. So these students have to meet a certain standard to be able to pass that course and move forward. I don't know what the percentage is that goes on in the schools, who's passing it and what level they're passing it. But I have to take that into consideration. I also have to take into consideration the fact that there's two different ways of teaching math. One is to teach for these standardized tests, and the other is to teach to get that student competent to pass those competencies. I'd much rather see them pass the competencies and rank 302 than to have our math teachers, our social studies teachers, our English teachers, science teachers teaching to some test, just so we can be rated. And you've heard me all rail about this. If we can, throw one of these standardized tests out the window, let's do it. Obviously, it can't happen because there's state aid and federal aid that's all tied to it. They got that, but I don't. Those scores right there, I kind of look at it, I'm like, yeah, there's probably something there, but I think we have to look at it more as a district-wide. How are our kids performing on their competencies to have a truer measure of whether those math tutors are necessary? Not for those scores, but for the competencies that our schools are requiring the students to pass, to move forward. So, I mean, that's where maybe the input from administration and the teachers can help us base a decision. If, the administrators say, hey, they are really struggling, then yeah. But if the picture is not as bleak as those standardized test scores say they are, then, it's coming to the point right now where I don't want to touch general ed, but I don't see anything in here that's coming out of special ed. There's got to be something in special ed that we can do. And I know and it's always been the third rail. So unfortunately, this is what we're left with. And the tax burden, we're talking, if we keep those two in there, we're talking $200,000 comes right off that 526. And yeah, it's what, 75 cents. I think the 200,000 is like 75 cents on the tax rate, but we're at $5 on the tax rate, so any that little bit is going to help. as much as I don't like it, as much as I believe there should be math tutors in school for those kids that do struggle, maybe there's some other way. But, you know, that we can address that. The CBA may interfere with something like that, but, you know, I basing it on standardized test scores, I don't want to use that as a metric as to whether these math coaches are needed or not. I'd rather think information come from administration to show us where our accurate here with where, you know, we've got a very experienced teaching staff. And, you know, I'd rather see the district numbers rather than in comparison to some schools that are, we absolutely know some of these schools are teaching the tests. So, you know, that's where I'm at right now, so.
Melanie, did you have other comments?
I kind of agree with Jean and would like to see what the administration has to say, but I do know that it's come up before, so I feel like it's valid that it's needed. And the only other thing I wanted to say, some of this math coaching and stuff does actually help special ed, because the further the kids fall behind, once they hit a certain point, you're talking about more special education, one-on-one time with the teacher. So it actually does help prevent that.
And I think before we ask for administration's input, I just want to remind us that we did spend a significant amount of time putting into place some maneuvers to help control the special education budget. So that is in the works. It's just nothing that's going to be reflected in this cut sheet right at this second.
Right.
Can we hand it over and ask for Principal McCarthy's input? And I believe Principal Gary was absent today.
She was in school, but she had to leave, and she said we could call her.
Oh, do you want me to get her on the phone? Let's see. Wait a second.
Oh, she's on, oh, great.
So having one piece of data determine the overall picture of a student is not the correct measure to do it. I definitely hear what you're saying, Jean, you know, but we do have to factor that in. We are using iReady this year as well, which is kind of real-time data for us. So students back in the first and second week took an assessment for iReady for math. Shortly thereafter at our staff meeting, we had the math department really dive into that data to analyze where do they have to kind of pick up the ball and move on. So they developed very deliberate plans. Our math coach was in there during those, helping them plan lessons to best address the learning needs of the students. And they did comparisons with the statewide assessment in iReady to see if there were commonalities. You know, we found some and we found some that were not, you know, as to be anticipated from two different type of assessments. And we will be doing the second round in January. So we'll see if the interventions we place in the classroom in regards to the areas of growth that students need, if what we put in place has worked to have students grow. That will happen sometime in January.
So you have the math coach now because it's grant funded.
Correct.
Do you mind speaking a little bit to what the math coach does for your building and what the loss would be if you didn't have that position?
For those of us participating in athletics, a powerful coach makes a big difference. You know, I see with my 3 children, both music coach, athletic and athletic coaches, what a difference they have made both in the positive and for the ones that were kind of indifferent in how that can impact how my kids progress in both forms. With our math intervention coach, she's a coach, she's not an evaluator. So she's able to team up with those teachers to analyze lessons, analyze instruction, put into place things that maybe the teacher isn't seeing. They have 6 classes, they have 100 kids. Maybe they miss something along the way that through an observation that's not evaluative, that she can push forward to them, go, here, try this. And they're likely to do that because it's a partnership. Losing that, we lose that outside piece. And, you know, do I feel my teachers will still do a good job? Of course. But it is a different extra effort. They will have to try to really pull back and look, which sometimes is not as easy when you're moving pretty quick or you diving really deep and working really hard.
And just a clarifying question, is it correct that the reason the math coach was in the budget for Hill School and Three River School is because the administrations for those schools thought that they were needed?
Yes, so we had a math coach for years at Three Rivers and we couldn't fill the position, so we lost the position in the budget. And then when we received the ESSER funds, we were able to fill the position again. So we've had a very experienced teacher in that role, and the ESSER funds are finished for staffing, so we would lose that position again. And then we can probably unmute Wendy if you want to hear from her, but I know that she's had to split her time with one of the literacy coaches to try to fill in for math because it's a high need area. So can you try to unmute her and see maybe with the microphone?
I'll try.
Will it work?
Can you hear?
Yeah. You might need the microphone so that when she speaks, it's louder.
So I go to unmute her.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
So it's coming out there.
thank you, Wendy.
It keeps muting me.
Keeps defaulting back.
Hang on, we're trying to unmute you.
This tower.
I'm here. Hopefully it doesn't kick me back to being muted.
Oh, I'm over here now.
Are we there?
That's
Okay, we'll try this. Okay, just stop me or wave at me. I can see you guys if you need me to slow down or say something again. So we've definitely been on a journey over the last several years, and the math coach position
Hold
has
on,
been.
Wendy, we're not hearing you with the current speaker that we have. Are you okay if Sandy calls you?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. We're definitely not set up to hear people from online. And then at some point we can add Dan, even though he's not put in for a coach, he can still speak to the skill level at this.
Yeah.
Try to do that.
And also you get sort of the fruits of,
So I can tell you a little bit.
I know.
Hi, Wendy.
Hello. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. I have a sick kiddo at home. Not getting any better. Fingers crossed. So the math coach for us is a little bit of we recognize the need for the math coach. So right now what we have is I have somebody that comes in 2 days a week to assist as a literacy coach, but then the position that we have in the building is a 50-50. So one teacher is a 50% literacy coach and the other one is a 50% math coach. It's been instrumental over the last 3 years, and to put it in data perspective, and this is in comparison to the state. So in 21, our overall proficiency for math was 29%, and in 23, our overall proficiency for Hill School went up to 43%. So that's a 14% increase in our data, and that's, to give you the flip side, the state only had a 6% increase. So that takes into COVID and all of that account. The work that we're doing in the building, it's not just the math coach. I mean, it's our teachers, it's the team, it's everybody, but it's facilitated by the math coach. It takes a high level of understanding, especially in the math climate right now, to really dig into the needs of the students. Right now, our math coach facilitates all grade levels plan with a math coach every other week for an hour. And the team will come together. They'll bring what we call formative assessments, which is an in-class assessment. It's not a standardized test. It's an in-class assessment. And they review that data and they track it. And they look for instructional implications, the things that we need to do to adjust our instruction. They talk about it because through our journey over the last 3 years, we really recognize that what they call collective efficacy, which is the team working together and everyone being together kind of on the same page, is what moves us forward. And that's what our data will show you. We did make a couple of specific standardized, I would call them standardized tests adjustments last year. That looks in the form of, we just taught the kids how to use the online testing system prior to the test. And so they had access, they knew what it looked like. So they were able to log in, manage the system. They knew how to click the buttons right. It wasn't about teaching to the test. It was just teaching them how to use the interface, the user face for them. One of the biggest, and what I attribute to the growth we've had over the last 3 years, is directly related to the work the team has been doing, facilitated by a coach, in relation to our students, our special education students. We've done a lot to push to make sure that they have access to grade level curriculum, they have the appropriate supports in place, and it's the idea of making sure that everyone on that team has the ability to meet the needs of the students, and we've seen a ton of growth with that. If we don't, I'm absolutely aware of budget constraints, but if we lose the person to facilitate that work, it's a lot. It's not something that can be maintained by classroom teachers completely on their own, and it's not something that administration can do completely on their own, because it takes hours and training to pull all these resources together. So that's kind of in a nutshell for us why I asked for that position, because I have the data to prove that we're making those gains. We really need to be able to continue with that team efficacy and planning and working together, and need that person to support it. So that's our math journey, hopefully in numbers, to kind of give you an understanding. I would say that it does somewhat mirror what we're seeing in our formative assessments, as well as our standardized test scores, as well as iReady. All of those things tend to match here. I don't have a one jump to the other, that the kids are performing one way or the other.
Thank you, administrators. Dr. Morris, you were going to add to the sort of what you experienced when they come out of the pipeline to the high school.
Yeah, this will be pretty general, but I think I have a similar philosophy to Gene in that I prioritize growth, student growth over, hey, Wendy, I'm going to mute you. Okay. All right. Prioritize student growth rather than achievement. And part of that is meeting students where they're at when they come here. And I think what I think indicates that there is a greater need for math support is that we've had to increase the numbers of sections that we have for pre-algebra. Pre-algebra is our essentially remedial math class for students who are struggling and need support in order to do high school math. And over the past 2 years, we've had to increase those sections. And we've had to do that not just for Pembroke students, but because there's a need from the other sending towns as well. So that is why I think there was, the rationale for putting these in the budget initially. The reason that they're included here is, I wouldn't say it's so much an endorsement as it's a regretful inclusion, because just taking into consideration the context and, the increases that, we're all looking at, we wanted to come up with a solution that could help get the entire budget passed. So, but that's it.
So, Patty, do you need a motion on the cut sheet, or what do you need from us tonight?
We do need direction. I need to go back and tell Amber, we need to get budget binders to the NBC by Thursday. So we need to give them a budget inclusive of what you want to incorporate from this sheet. So however you want to break it down, if you generally want to make a motion. We like all the cuts, but except for the 2 positions. However, we're going to make it work out.
Do you need a motion with respect to the trust expenditure right now? That not really, right?
No, just the general budget. We can review the warrant articles, but we're basically getting direction from you that yes, if we cut these things, you're going to let us move forward in the future with the instructional materials trust.
I'll float a motion to move forward with the recommended cuts, except the Pembroke Hill School line 1, Hill Math Coach, line 2, TRS Math Coach, and the minimum amount needed from line MISC fringes associated with those two positions.
I'll second.
All right, motion and second. Any discussion on the motion?
Need to include the salaries for those positions. Oh, no, wait, sorry.
Yeah, those are the two lines, yep.
Any other discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, say aye. 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 Passes. So there's your direction.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay.
Now, is there anything about, this is our version, do you have other things that you would like to?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think we talked about like the last time around, like the sports that have, you know, the lowest participation, maybe, or something along those. I think we talked about that kind of stuff, but anything also, I mean, that's a valid area to investigate where we can reduce costs.
So just a high level, not really knowing how to approach this, I just kind of attacked the bottom line. And Josh anticipated that he estimated around $30,000 for like lining the fields and mowing and all of that to prepare for sports. I just took the entire 1410 account code, which is where all the co-curriculars are housed, and that total was $496,650. And then the other place in the budget that you would find associated with that is the co-curricular buses. Which is $64,500. So to cut every co-curricular, meaning every club and athletics and that we have, is $591,150.
Still a drop in the bucket.
And that, you know, we, just to remind people who were on the board for a bit of time, Sergeant Frost came and did a whole presentation on drug prevention and all of the benefits to having things for kids to do during the time of day when they get into the most trouble, which is between school ending and families gathering back at the house home from work.
And I just want to put in a plug for the value of extracurricular, co-curriculars in sport. It's a venue for, you know, student athletes, student co-curricular participants to learn and also practice values that are sometimes, you know, especially going back to our conversation about standardized testing, left behind or they fall by the wayside in a rigorous academic environment. And it's just critically important for our kiddos, for their social, emotional well-being, for them to be off screens and having interpersonal connections. These are, you know, the bang for the buck for these programs is tremendous. And especially some of the kids where there's an activity where only a minority of children participate, the meaning of those programs to those children is, you know, sometimes very, very critically important. So I don't think this is a fruitful area for us to investigate cutting.
I will say that, you know, these cuts right here, so we're down, we're at 526, now we're down to basically 326 coming off the budget. Still we're still going to be 3.2 in the increase on the increase side. So the very real possibility that we go to town, you know, to school district meeting in March and this budget fails, we have to have that list, including these math coaches, to sit there and say, hey, this is where it's coming from. And that's fine. I agree wholeheartedly. And the math coach, you know, I was a little bit hard on it, but you know, these are the things we have to look at because we are getting to a point where this is becoming unsustainable. For all of us that are working, you know, we can make adjustments, but there are a lot of people, those fixed income people, we can't, you know, we owe them a debt also because they have educated our children. And we owe them, I don't know if I mentioned this, but when my kids, the day my daughter graduated high school, I have 39 years from that point on to pay taxes in this town, to pay off the debt that I owe this town for educating my children. So, you know, that's something that they're doing. They've raised their kids. They've gotten to that point and beyond, and now we're asking them to more. And I think we have to be very careful moving forward. But I mean, I support this budget. I have a real hard time with the special ed side of it right now because that increase is so dramatic, and the transportation. But unfortunately, transportation is like, hey, let's put it on RSP, and Dale's the only one that comes back. And you know, that's something, again, something out of our control. And you know, without some sort of intervention from the federal government or the state on a really meaningful basis, there's going to be people, I mean, they're just going to pick up, they're going to be leaving their homes that they've had for, and even people, the kids in the school, are going to say it's coming unaffordable to get further north, wherever it's cheap, maybe to Tennessee, who knows? And you're going to have a drain based on what's going on here. So moving forward with this budget, which we have to do, real partly, we have to have another cut sheet in place for March. Including, I mean, it's everything at that point.
And we talked about this briefly at roughly this time of year last year, but, you know, folks that are eligible should be contacting the town side of the house, and making sure that they are filing for any of the state law tax abatements that they might qualify for, including veteran status tax abatements and other property tax abatements, because those are out there and they are widely underused and they're hugely helpful for folks who qualify.
And if I may, Jess is really excited to come and speak to you guys in non-public, so she'll be here at the next meeting to talk about her work in special ed, what she's already started and where she's at with that. And then I did also invite her to the NBC so that she can give them information and like I think you called it sanitized, which is, you know, she can give you a lot more information in non-public, but is also prepared to speak to them and give them as much information as she's able to try to give them more information than they typically get so that they have a good understanding.
We have, the selectmen have a meeting tomorrow night, and I asked Amber for this summary of changes to the budget, so I'm going to bring that to them, so they have an awareness.
Yeah.
The cleanest. So I'm going to bring that to them tomorrow, the selectmen. Also, I will give this, I did not give this to NBC because it's the only copy I had, but I'll also give that to them
Great.
on Thursday so they can see, and they've all had access to the
Yeah.
budget now. I just get that. Yeah. So,
And just for my edification, when you say you send the packet, Patty, do you send the summary stuff like that as well?
That made me think when Jean said that maybe that wasn't attached to the packet when we sent it, but I do send every document that the board gets, but I'll in the future make sure that that's also attached if it wasn't in the past.
yeah, I'll make some hard copies.
We're-
To bring with me, and then.
We can do that for you too if you want, just let us know.
And then, so they'll have this, you know, at least, you know, in the end. Guess they switched some money somewhere.
That's how we're gonna do it. All right, let me just see if there's any other, budget modifications, budget thoughts. Carrie, did you have anything else before we move on?
No, I wish I had some wonderful thoughts, but
Same here. Melanie? Okay. All right. Yeah.
Nothing, that you're seeing at the building level on the special ed side that can be addressed or adjusted. You know.
It's, and you're not alone. I don't know, I know that that's not gonna make you feel better, but I think all of our district budgets are up between 10 and 12%. And I agree with you, this is catastrophic and it's around the state and it's a lack of any support and funding and, you know, that the burden this places on small communities, is just, it is unsustainable and I don't know the answer, but it's, we feel your pain.
Yeah, and I mean, just to say it out loud, I'm sure everyone here is aware that there have been 2 recent rulings from the New Hampshire Supreme Court that are, you know, replete with lots of controversy, so we don't need to discuss them, but the gist of it is, you know, yeah, there's not enough money coming to the schools, so surprise, like as if we didn't know already, you know, the system is not set up for us to have enough money to do what we need to do, and that's why this hurts so bad.
From the moment the federal law passed, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and they promised funding, it has never been funded from the day that that law passed for special education.
Okay.
Let's move on to the happy topic of warrant articles.
So we made the changes last time that you discussed. We have not obviously filled in the budget number, but once we go back and make the changes that you just approved, we will have a number for there. And we still need to fill in the numbers for the agreement. We're going to recess our meeting and talk about that, because that's ready to be addressed this evening. We did move around and order and change the amounts on the warrant articles that you discussed last time. So we have, the number 5 is actually where we start, 40,000 for school building capital reserve to come out. We have $100,000 for special ed next. We have 155 is what you changed the school building reserve fund to be funded at. Cut it in half approximately. We have the technology for 10,000. We have the vehicle for 10,000. We have 25,000 for equipment installation, and we have $100,000 for the site improvement trust. So I think I captured everything that you talked about at the last meeting. If there are any others you want to see language drafted for, we're happy to do that.
Backup generators?
Yeah. But we're just pop into my head.
It's too early.
Oh. Gene,
Thank you for making all these adjustments and running us through them so we can remember what we had talked about. What action is needed tonight, aside from the CBA that we're going to talk about later?
If you do end up ratifying the CBA, we will fill those numbers in, and as long as you're comfortable with all of this, it is still a draft, so you don't need to vote, but we could just give it to the MBC on Thursday if you're okay with that. And we'll just let them know you haven't taken official action, but it is a draft, at least they can see the numbers.
Sense of the board, anyone have any?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it looks good. Great, okay, let's move on.
For the business part, yeah.
Okay, we still do not have any members of the public present, so that concludes number 6, public comments. Do we have non-public aside from our recess?
I meant to tell you during, I'm sorry, I missed that. We do have one item under 2 letters A and C. Sorry about that.
All right, so the board has need to go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A3 Roman 2 lowercase a, which is the dismissal, promotion, compensation, or disciplining of an employee or the investigation of any charges against him or her, and lowercase c, which is matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the board. So on a roll call vote, Carrie?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Jean?
Yes.
Melanie?
Yes.
Okay.